going live.
We're going live.
We're live.
We're live now. Awesome.
We're live. There's a 8-second delay, so people are probably not going to see us for a few minutes or for a minute or two. There we go. Hello, folks. We're live.
We are live.
Welcome. So we're a minute or so early, but we're going to just kind of jump into it. And so today we're going to be debating what is the AI benefits for humanity. And either Nathan or I will be for, and then the other person will be against. We've asked folks to add some questions in the chat if you are live. So feel free to add the chat questions. We'll try to address them and get them in as we go. We had some folks add some questions beforehand, and we'll try to address those as well. And so for folks listening in the future, we recorded this live on Wednesday, November 19th. We'll post it on the podcast channel. It'll be on YouTube if you want to watch the whole thing. For folks joining us live today, thanks. Welcome. Hello. If you're new to 3reate, we talk about topics of creativity in art, science, and technology. And we thought it'd be fun to do a live stream debate. And here we are. I don't know, anything you want to mention, Nathan, before we flip the proverbial coin?
No, that was, I thought we were going to do digital coin, but a real coin works because we're living in the real space now. But
yeah, we got to have
a great overview.
Some sort of non-AI.
Yeah.
All right. Shut the studio door. Now we're legit. Okay. So you want to call heads or tails, and I'll let you pick. How about that?
Okay. Why don't we just assign heads is
okay.
Heads is pro, tails is con, and then I'll call it, and whichever one it comes up. Oh, I see now. I see why it's difficult. Okay, fine. I'll call it in the air and I'll choose a side.
All right. It's a real coin. For the kids at home, this is how we used to pay for things before credit cards.
Yeah. Tails.
It's actually tails.
Okay, awesome.
It's gonna be so hard for me not to swear on this. That's the hardest thing of this whole live stream for me right now is to not swear.
Does something happen if you do? No, right?
I don't know. Let's not.
You're just gonna slap on the wrist. You're just gonna slap on the wrist. We're human here. And I will choose con. I'll go against AI here.
You'll go against.
I think typically you tend to be someone who announces the negative stuff on AI, and I usually go for. So I'll take the opposite side here.
Need to stretch out a little bit for this.
Stress them.
All right, so I'm pro AI. Oh boy.
Yeah. How do you want to do this? Do we do opening statements and then pick up topics, or do we?
Yeah, okay. Oxford statement or Oxford kind of style, I think would be fun. And I'll just do a disclaimer for folks that we're doing this. We're doing a debate. We're picking sides, obviously. So what we say might not necessarily reflect our personal views, but we're going to be trying to make arguments based on the industry, based on our own knowledge, for and against, to give some folks a little bit of entertainment, hopefully, but you also might learn something. We're not going to make stuff up. At least I won't be, but I might not necessarily agree with all the pro AI points.
Yeah, I think that's a good disclaimer. Is both of us are well enough read, I think, with AI that we can argue either side, which is why we did it this way, where you can flip a coin and either of us will choose. And whatever we use does not necessarily mean that's what we actually believe. It's, I think, offering perspectives. And that's why you're the jury, audience, I should say. That's why the audience is the jury.
Yeah. All right. I guess, so you won the coin toss, but you're also against. So I'll let you go first if you want to open up.
Yeah. Okay. I would say that the main case for against AI is a misallocation of resources. And that has a few things layered into it. First, I think the obvious one is costs, whether they be financial or resource costs, like utilities that we as humans use. But also, I think it redirects a lot of the human potential in the wrong direction, meaning leaning towards AI because it becomes an easy route. So those are the two big things under the one umbrella of it introduces bad prioritization on the human side.
Okay. So why AI is good? I was just going to argue against it, so I was going to lose right out the gate. AI is the most transformational technology humanity has ever created.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it is a technology that allows us to have non-deterministic input effectively, meaning we don't have to program the output. We don't have to program heuristics. We don't have to tell the AI what to do. The AI will be able to learn and determine the answers to the questions or the results to the tasks that we give it. And that's the first technology that humanity has ever created that effectively needs no human input. And so I would argue that the pros of AI are completely unknown, other than we're in such early days that as we use it, as we learn how to use it, as it gets better, as people make it better, as AI makes itself better, it will only continue to grow and flourish.
Yeah, so this is where I go from the con side, the grow and flourish part. I think you can tack on the incessant growth, and we're sort of seeing that now, where so many investments financially are going into AI that many people think that we are in a financial bubble with all these circular investments. So, given the state of the world that we're in right now, you can start to ask the questions: is funneling all of our resources into this AI circular investment bubble, quote unquote, the right approach, when we could be spending that money more effectively and improving the lives of the people that are already here on this earth?
I would say that your premise is flawed in that it has nothing to do with AI and has everything to do with finance.
You could argue that they were connected, I would say.
Okay.
Otherwise, if you replaced AI in this scenario where all the money is being funded into these AI companies, if you replaced AI with something else, like, let's just use another buzzword technology, blockchain, we would not be in the same situation, right?
I would argue that the investment in the technology. So why are we investing in the technology? We're investing in the technology because there needs to be a massive amount of compute and effectively memory behind the thing. And so the big technology that enabled AI was GPUs, graphical processing units, that allow lots of effectively matrix maths to happen concurrently. Whereas a CPU and your computer or your phone isn't really good at those tasks. And so our entire society up until maybe 4 or 5 years ago was effectively completely geared towards having, generalized compute, couldn't really do complex calculations, which didn't even enable AI to be a thing. With asterisks, right? So AI has been around for a long time. We're talking about generative AI, LLMs, chat programs, those kind of things. And so we have to make a massive investment because we just don't have the 30 some odd years of the internet and data center compute and whatever else that has built up that empowers the web as we know it today. It doesn't exist for AI. So we have to make those massive investments, or people feel that we need to make those massive investments to continue to scale it, because we're right now, a lot of the limitation of current AI is compute memory, physical constraints of technology. The data is pretty clear that there's probably some sort of plateau, but it's also pretty clear that we really haven't hit it yet. And so the models are only going to get better as we do more compute and scale. It's not just necessarily about training in new data. It's about allowing them to hold more what we call context in memory. If you think about how you think about stuff, you can only think about so many different things at once before your mind kind of goes crazy. AI doesn't really have that problem yet, or at least we haven't found it. We just don't have the ability for it to hold more information in. And so the current theory right now is that the more ability we give it to be able to do that, the bigger and more massive this becomes because of the way the algorithms that enable AI work. And so on paper, it's infinitely scalable, which is true until it's not.
Right. And that's the con argument is on paper, it's infinitely scalable, but we have to dump these resources. So putting money into, not just money, but energy, water into building these large data centers, the negative externalities of doing something like that is people who actually need that energy and water to live, they'll see their costs go up. Now, I'm sure that you can build some financial structures such that, these data center builders have some sort of resource agreement, but what's to prevent them from trying to negotiate these contracts where they get to use, or they get first access to X amount of resources when those resources could be going to, say, a city, a town, a municipality, right? So that's the question mark around the investments that we're putting into building these things to prepare for this quote unquote future of AI that you can argue we quite haven't really seen the benefits of, with all the studies you see out there where AI is out there, people are using it, but it hasn't quite made the hopeful strides that we've wanted it to make in terms of its adoption in the corporate world, for instance.
It needs a chance.
and that's the question, is how much is that chance worth putting trillions of dollars that we could be using to improve the lives of the people that are currently living right now into this future that is a probable chance that it actually has the impact that we hope that it has.
Yeah. And I mean, so yes, there's a big bet that we need to make, but we're not going to know. And again, the math, the observed scaling of AI from where it was with, like, the ChatGPT benchmark is always kind of the thing where ChatGPT 3 was pretty bad. And that was like less than 2 years ago. ChatGPT 5 point something released, I think it was this week, and it's immeasurably better on every possible way. And I would assume even, resource intensiveness as well, because the companies who build the AI need to also not expend money on physical electrons effectively and generating power and that kind of stuff. So there is an incentive in the system for the producers to also want it to be more efficient because it's cheaper for them to run, and they either get more profit or they can funnel that money back into the development, whatever they want to do with it. So I think the other thing is it's hard to describe the potential because, again, the math, the theory, the observed journey thus far has been effectively limitless. And so I think the main argument in the field right now is that it'll scale as much as we give it. And so once it hits some point, a lot of the jobs that people are doing, we won't have to do anymore. And that will either free up people to do different work or better work, or just maybe not work at all, right? The universal income, all these things have kind of been floated. I don't really want to debate the economics too much because it's a lot of questions. But I think the thing that I don't hear a lot about is that once AI, like if we were to kind of like give it some kind of human development is like,
okay.
It's like a toddler. It's maybe a 1-year-old, right?
Is it zygote stage yet? Yeah, sure.
Yeah, it like can't sit up by itself. Like it'll fall over if you just let it, sit there. And once it gets to like probably teenager, we'll probably start. Well, I don't know if it'll even take that long. Once it gets to the point where like you could read and write as a human, even like a first grader, because it doesn't have any sort of limitations that we know about other than compute, it'll help us do things in theory that no human being could do today, or no group of human beings could do today. And so there's all sorts of possibilities for unknown advances in anything once it gets the ability to have the knowledge to train, but then also has the ability to execute and learn. And so I think a very real possibility that we'll see in the future is not that AI is going to just take over like PhD research, but it will be so good, so fast, and have so much memory that it'll be able to be your like lab assistant from like Iron Man, like the Jarvis character, right? The computer system. I think that's much more likely of what it will be, and not some like omniscient technology that's just going to magically do stuff. I don't think that's going to be here anytime soon. but we've effectively developed a computer program that has limitless capability. And so the only way to keep moving on that is to make a massive investment and try it.
Yeah, I mean, we can use that as a segue into the next element of against AI, right? The Marvel analogy is a good one. You can actually accidentally develop something like Ultron. If you build something, if you build this AI that we supposedly can actually achieve, you might go the wrong way, or you build something that doesn't have the same intentions as you do. In this space is known as the alignment problem. Whatever AI system you are building may not have the same value system that humans have, and in turn, it may do things that are either harmful to humans or actively trying to oppress humans. So there's a very risky, slippery slope here where the more we invest into AI and the more we try to build these types of systems, the higher the chance that we build something that is a tipping point and we can't come back from, because once it has the super intelligence, it beats us in every asset that we have as humans.
Be afraid of the unknown. Right. So like, yeah, it could happen.
Easier said than done, right?
It could also unlock utopia.
Yeah. And I think this is Pascal's wager, right? This is a philosophical bet where it's like, what's the risk of eternal damnation if you don't believe in God versus if you just believe in God your whole life and hope that there is a heaven.
Yeah. And for the Ultron thing, for folks to like lose the reference. So Ultron is like a character that the AI fused with some other technology, and it kind of became this like omniscient, godlike superhero thing that started to have its own divergent views on humanity and morality and that kind of thing from what you would probably have in the average human. The alignment question, I think, is really interesting. We did get a question put in about that earlier. So, I mean, basically, like, what the question was, do you think we're close to achieving alignment, or is alignment even possible? And I think to break this down for folks, so like alignment in the field is effectively how well does AI conform to like humanity, and or how well does AI conform to a set of given tasks, basically. So if you ask it to read all of Wikipedia and tell you, of the top articles that, are viewed, what's the synopsis behind them? And then it spits out some random nonsense about something else. So that would be unalignment. Whereas the other part of the alignment is like, how does it align to humanity? I think it's two very, very separate questions. And I would say from the technology perspective, like if you're asking it to do stuff, or does it hallucinate is a word folks will use, that kind of thing. Yeah, I mean, it's still in the infancy. It's only getting better. Anyone who's ever used this, how many R's in strawberry, it was one of the dumb things people were doing for a while, or, doing some basic math and that kind of stuff. And so part of that is the algorithm that created the chat AI that you're interacting with might not have been exposed to that. There's all sorts of tuning and grounding that needs to happen. And so we fix the bugs as they happen, right? And so it does better. The other part of it is because it's a non-deterministic program, I guess, for lack of a better term, it's going to make mistakes just as any human. I would argue that on average, I think we're seeing it make less and less mistakes over time, and it's getting better and better. And again, going back to resources, one of the reasons that it can't remember everything you're doing in a chat and it starts to like circle itself around is that it runs out of memory, right? There's only so many GPUs in the data center that the companies are allocating to you to run. And so you start to get into all sorts of weird things. Depending on how they're building the AI, a lot of times it'll refeed the whole chat to itself. So because it can't keep that all in your head. So it'd be like talking to a human and having them forget everything every few seconds and then having to remind them the entirety of your conversation. It's really hard to do something large and complicated that way because of the lack of resources. I guess if you want to respond to that, you can, because I do want to talk about the human humanity alignment AI problem?
Problem or question is a good one, right? I think another nuance to it is you can be quote unquote aligned, but how the alignment lines up may not be exact. So there's a very common scenario called the Paperclip Maximizer that's used to describe machines. So if you give a robot the task of make as many paper clips as you can, it might go down the path of, okay, well, I need more resources. I need raw material to make this. And I think it goes along the lines of, well, there's iron in human blood. So if I just harvest human blood, I can recoup the iron and make more paper clips. So if I really wanted it to be the best at the task, I would have to kill all humans, harvest their blood, create paper clips, right? So the task is still aligned in the sense of it's doing what you told it to do, but how it goes about doing it may not be it doesn't have I don't want to call it reasoning because it's sort of used now in different contexts with LLMs, but it doesn't have the capability to understand the nuances of the path that it's taking to get there. So to answer the question directly, will we ever get to the alignment problem? I think it's one of those questions that fundamentally we don't know until you find out that we don't have it. It's almost like can you prove that there's a black swan? You can never know unless you found every single white swan or every single swan out there in the world and proven that they're all white. It's one of those catastrophic issues that you can't really get an answer to until you actually know the answer, and then it's too late. So
for people joining, we're debating the merits of AI and whether or not AI is beneficial for humanity. I am for AI. Nathan is against, and we're talking about AI alignment right now. He brought up the paperclip problem. So one of the other variations of the paperclip problem is that the machine prints so many paper clips that it consumes all the resources on Earth, and then there's nothing but paper clips, right? I mean, I think that's a human alignment problem. And so I think the core idea is, does the AI keep what we think humanity is, what we would, on average, again, because everybody has a different version of this. I would argue humanity is not aligned to humanity. We have wars, we have famine, we have poverty, we have people who have excessive amount of resources. So that aside, I think most people, or nearly all people, would agree that people should be allowed to live and flourish to some extent. Whereas AI might decide that we shouldn't exist, or we shouldn't flourish, or we shouldn't be allowed to. Sure, I guess, I don't know if I care. Because it's effectively a digital slave at that point, right? Because the idea, I think, that makes it scary for people is if AI had agency, then it might do stuff like Terminator or killer robots and stuff. Sure, maybe, but if we don't do that, then there's no problem there. And then it just pouts, right? I don't want to help you because you're a stupid human, right? Or I'm better than you, or I'm going to replicate across the world and crash the network. And there's a lot of sci-fi plots for this. But I think too that, there's rules around robotics, there's rules around AI that, the core rule is you can't ever hurt a human. There's a lot of logic tests around, can you reason that? And I would say yes, because we have rules around that. You can't kill anyone unless it's the military, and unless our government doesn't like your government, and then humans kill other humans. And so no matter what kind of rules, so I'll actually argue, kind of to your point, is there's theoretically no safeguard, because anything you would try to program into it, you could be reasoned out of it. But that's no different than humans. And so my argument would be, so what? That's how humans are. And if AI starts to build killer robots and we get Terminator, then I guess we'll have to invent a time machine and send one back to kill the the plot of Terminator.
We'll switch sides for a little bit. And to your point, I think a lot of the human evaluations of our morality are done post fact, right? So no one's tried until after they've killed someone. Whereas when it comes to something like AI and making those decisions, we usually hold them to a high standard and make sure that they don't do it before they actually even do it, which is sort of this weird paradoxical sort of trying to anticipate what's going to happen in the future thing. And again, these aren't new ideas, right? Even though we're talking about AI, like an embodied AI or something that can actually do stuff, these are some conversations that people were having with autonomous driving back in 10 years ago, however long ago it was. It was what if the car has to make a decision to kill the grandmother or the baby or whatever, right? These are not new topics. We're just kind of reviving them, and the stakes are quote unquote higher when you have something that can actually do things and more than just drive. But a very similar conversation.
Safety is something that needs a lot of work, right? And
Mhm.
I'll argue for you at this point that I don't think there's enough of it happening.
Yeah.
And it needs to be much more of a focus on all the companies, and our legislation needs to reflect that. And I think part of the problem in general with AI is that there isn't really clear accountability. If the AI makes a determination or makes a decision, who's actually
Mhm.
liable for that? Is that the programmer? Is that the company? Is that, so we need to figure that kind of stuff out. And I think our current system will actually correct for that. So I would again argue that, since I'm arguing for AI, it's not necessarily an AI problem. It's a human systems problem, and we need to develop those systems to limit or regulate or whatever you want to call it. And then
Mhm.
the AI would theoretically be bound to that, because we would program it to be, following our laws or follow our morals or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the arguments around that is, even if you supply it with rules, when you hit the point of um, it's very much that we don't know what we don't know. So when you hit a point or some threshold, and we won't know when we hit this, I think that's kind of the point is, when you have something that is intelligent enough, it can start to do things that we don't know about, because either we haven't thought of it that way, or it sort of has some emergent idea that never crossed our minds. Because again, you can't anticipate all the things you don't know yet, even as a collective society. When you have a system that can do that and is more replicable than humans, can duplicate intelligence better than humans, you can hit a point at which you kind of go down really, really fast. Because once you hit that threshold, there's literally no turning back. Even if you give it the rules, it'll find some way to circumvent those rules, because we're humans and we built those rules, and there are always loopholes. Look in the legal system, there are always loopholes. So that's the argument for not, even if you have the regulation system in place, not to advance AI to that point where you don't know what can happen if you hit that critical.
They're all human systems, same problem. And I would say that we're in such an infancy stage of AI that we have plenty of time to get ahead of this. And let's try it. Let's do it. Right. Like, as we're doing it, let's hopefully have people input to what are those, bounds, or what are those capabilities that happen that we need to say, hey, wait a minute, we need to start thinking about this a little bit more. It's the same kind of debate that's happening with self-driving cars right now, right? It's like, most self-driving cars are still being tested with a human in the loop, right? Driving or sitting behind the wheel. I think Waymo is the only one that I know of that is also probably common, that people have maybe heard of, that doesn't need it. I've ridden in one. It's bonkers, but it works. But it's also it's also only allowed to follow predetermined routes, right? So there's a limitation, and so I'm all for that, right? Like, let's let the Waymo do its Waymo thing, since I'm pro AI, right? And it
Yeah.
works. There's always going to be bugs, but you have traffic,
Mhm.
right? You have people who get in car accidents. Like, that's no different than any system that humans are sole providers of. But I would argue that over time, and I think any kind of evidence you see now, AI is still better than people. The algorithms are still better overall. And when they're not, we can say, be better, and then it will figure it out, and then it'll be better. Whereas with humans,
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I think you could argue the same with AI. Just giving it instruction is may not be enough, right? There's this sort of, how do you instruct, whether it's an LLM or an AI system, the task that you need or you want it to do. It doesn't magically fill in the gaps. And I think that's kind of one of the big gaps with adoption in AI right now, is people are expecting it to be able to predict what they want, and that's not the case. We as a human species aren't ready for that yet. So advancing the systems even more puts a wider gap between what we can anticipate and control versus what the system's capable of doing. Because as I mentioned, machine systems can duplicate faster. They can transmit information way faster than humans can. They can process information faster than humans can. So I think there's still a risk, even though you put in these, let's incrementally build towards things. You don't know if you have hit the point of no return until maybe it's way too late, or you can catch it. But even if you do catch it, what can you do? Like pulling the metaphorical or even physical plug may not do anything because it's replicated itself already. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah, I still don't think that's a con, right? I think that's just part of the development. And I would also argue it's still no different than human systems, right? It's like you have countries that invade other countries. They're not supposed to, but they do. And then we figure it out. So with AI, it's kind of one of those things where if the worst case scenario happens, we'll figure it out. I mean, hopefully we get to it before. I will concede that this is the first technology that we've ever created that is like this. Like no other technology has the ability to effectively self-replicate or learn. I'll use the term learning really loosely. Yeah. But when it comes to alignment, I think that's also one of the areas of research that we really need to continue to develop and fund. And it's also partly a resource constraining problem because, again, these models are effectively trained on patterns. It effectively memorizes how that pattern works and then redeploys that pattern. Whereas that's not how people think, right? Like if I'm talking to you, I'm not having to like think about what are the words and how do I do the language and then how do I communicate it and then how do I make the sound happen? And it's like this weird process. It all just kind of happens because that's how our biology has developed. And so AI doesn't like the term AI memory is floated around quite a bit, but it's not real memory in terms of what
kind of memory
humans would have, right? And so we need to develop those capabilities so that a lot of those, I think, problems kind of go away because it when you ask it to do something like, you know, how can I build the most harmful chemical possible? If there isn't some kind of safety measure saying this isn't something we want you to explain, it doesn't know that the harmful thing could hurt people, right? Because it's programmed effectively right now, and they're all like this to just give you the answer.
Yeah.
Right. And so once we can kind of break these memories or cognition type things, then it can have those higher level functions. It's the same thing with like a 3-year-old today, right? You don't let a 3-year-old make its own choices for the most part. They have a little bit of autonomy. They're starting to kind of figure the world out, but we don't give them the keys to the car and say, go nuts. Right. And so that's again, AI, like I termed it earlier, it's like barely a 1-year-old, if that. Same kind of problem, right? And it's like as we develop or as it helps us develop the capabilities to be able to retain knowledge and retain effectively values, then I think a lot of these problems might not even be problems.
So those types of problems may not be problems, but you mentioned something that I want to elaborate on in my argument against AI is you said as AI helps us. I think as we're seeing currently the adoption of AI and how people are using AI, actually technology trends, technology tools and trends in general, I think there's a potential for AI to make us worse at what we do as humans, which is think. So when you're offloading a task, depending on what kind of task it is, if the first thing you do is go to ChatGPT to, hey, read me the email that I just got and tell me what it says, when you could have just read the email yourself, I think that's a detriment to our race as intelligent beings. We're deferring skills like critical thinking to an LLM, and over time, that's going to deteriorate that ability. So I do question the capability of AI to help in the way that we're using it now.
Yeah, I can see that as a concern, but the abacus didn't erode people's ability to do math. right?
Sure,
The
but
calculator,
AI is not the abacus. Yeah.
the computer, the internet. I would say that, yeah, if you don't use the skills, sure, but we still have people who get PhDs in math and create, new proofs and methods and whatever the hell the math people do. So that hasn't gone away. I would use like NASA as an example. Like the word computer used to mean human being who was doing math in a room, right? We took people off the planet, put them on the moon with people doing a lot of hard math. Now we can do it. Well, I can do it on my phone. You could do it on your phone too. Probably don't even need your phone. Your phone's probably too powerful. But that didn't erode our ability to go to space, right? It just changed how we do it and effectively made it easier. So all those computer humans that used to do computation now do other stuff, or they're able to focus on how do we make the computer faster, the digital computer faster? How do we make the digital? So I think with AI, sure, you're going to see a lot of the way humans use knowledge, it will change, and the ways that we have to have knowledge will change. But I don't know that it will just make us all stupid overnight, at least, for sure. But I do think that what people are interested in and what people want to focus on will also evolve in ways that I can't possibly know and that we won't possibly able to know until it happens.
Yeah, you can use technology or technology analogs to see, right? I don't think it'll be an overnight thing. I think this is one of those gradual shaving away at well, our habits. So you can talk about more recently social media and the effect it's had on. We've talked about this on our podcast, the effect that social media has had on younger people and how they see themselves and how they relate to other people. You can go back even more and say the phone and the smartphone specifically, and what it's done to people's habits nowadays, where we're now all constantly looking at screens. Yes, the phone has been an incredible technology. Yes, AI can be an incredible technology, but it's going to have some negative detriments. And I think for something as powerful as AI and things that it can effectively erode, like the human ability to critically think, I think that's very, very dangerous for humans and people. Yeah, what if?
Right, because you
But
could have your
is
own
that
personalized AI tutor, and it could
mm,
help you understand things that you don't already understand. If you're bad at math, it can help you with math. If you're bad at English, it can help teach you English. It can not only help you learn, it'll start to understand how you learn, and I would say theoretically make it even better.
mm,
So, like, will it motivate you to do it? I mean, maybe sometime in the future. That's still a human problem. I don't think that's the technology problem. I think that's a human motivation problem. But as it gets better, and I mean, I use this stuff. We talk about this on the podcast too, but I use this stuff all the time where it's, instead of going to Wikipedia, which is a great source for high level abstract knowledge, I'll usually go to some sort of an AI program, type in a bunch of whatever, uh, give it some context, and then it spits out, probably 50 pages of stuff I know, right? Got to give it some entropy. But it'll give me answers. It'll give me all sorts of detail, and then I can skim it or have it skim it for me, present me with a summary or whatever, and then it'll help me actually get further on a path of discovery of something that I don't know about, or something that I might want to know more about, than if I were to just search for it myself. And there's some stuff that sometimes I'll just be like, oh, that's a fleeting thought. I wonder what, and I'll ask AI, it'll go do its thing, and it'll come back with some, report, and I'll read it. And I'll be like, okay, cool. Whereas I would never like Google it or Bing it. I guess I don't want to be promoting. Nobody bings, let's be
you gotta
honest.
throw in the big.
Nobody bings.
You could just ignore it. No one would have batted an eye.
Yeah, the next
Yeah,
live stream will debate Bing versus Google.
it's an interesting history, but I don't know if there's much of a debate there. There's a clear winner. So I don't disagree. There's definitely a possibility, but I think if you just look at the early adoption of generative AI now, you can see what people are using it for. Sora, AI slop. And I think that's a little bit of a hint into how people typically behave. And this is the majority of people, right? I'm not surely there are going to be outliers. Surely there are going to be people who will use AI effectively. But if you look at the broad strokes of what people are using or doing with AI, it's AI slop, as we've sort of seen. So I'm hopeful, but given the data, I don't really see that hopeful possibility being as fruitful as we would like it to be.
I concede your point that Sora is slop.
I hit a nerve. I hit a nerve. There you go.
Not even, you win that. I mean, there's a question in the chat: who decides when implementing AI is worth the cost? Why do they get to decide? I think that's an interesting point to kind of frame in the kind of pro AI and against AI. And I would argue for the people, it's the people who know what they're doing. It's the people who are building it, because the technology is so far beyond anything that we've made or understand. Most people, despite what you might think or hear or see on LinkedIn, have no idea what they're talking about when it comes to AI, even though everybody's an AI expert. So the people who are the experts, the people who are developing this, the companies that are behind it, need to be pushing this forward, and I think do need to be held responsible. I'll concede that. But the Congress can't even understand that a cell phone, I mean, this was a testimony that happened a couple of years ago. One of the senators, Mark Zuckerberg, was in front of Congress about, safety for social media. He's like, why doesn't my cell phone work? And Mark was like, well, that's Apple cell phone. We don't make them. So our Congress doesn't even understand the device that everybody pretty much has exclusively. If you're over like 4 and have a pulse, I feel like everyone has a cell phone. So the government is not in any position to be trying to figure out how to do it. And most people aren't either.
Yeah. I think it's a very good question. I think it's important to distinguish the difference between a technology and the outputs or the outcomes of the technology, right? So no one, strictly speaking, owns the technology itself of maybe the Wi-Fi spectrum, right? So not the perfect analogy, but the technology of wireless communications in general, no one really regulates that. No one really controls that. But you can't have a group like the FCC or someone who allocates the spectrum for use case, and that's something that the government regulates and can control. So the outcome of something like a wireless communications technology is what you can actively actually control as humans, whereas the technology itself, once it's out there, it's out there. So on the AI front, I don't think any specific entity, even if you're talking about experts in the AI space, I don't think that they strictly get the right, quote unquote, the right to control where it goes, but they get to control how people get to use it or the outcomes of it. So if in the best case scenario, AI becomes a common good and we feel that it's a benefit for everyone to have, like cell phone service, it should fall somewhere in the realm of the government to be able to provide those services for the people who can't, quote unquote, afford them, whatever that means, outright. That way we don't have this widening divide of the haves and the have-nots.
Before I make this argument, I'm going to remind people that I am pro AI in this debate. Nathan is against AI in this debate. And we're trying to do good faith about the argument and not necessarily our beliefs. To your point, with the FCC is a great example, or the FTC, are institutions that can't get their shit together to begin with. They're still trying to argue over radio spectrum, who watches broadcast TV? 10% of the population or less? Same with the radio. Like, car makers are taking AM radio out of the car. It's like arguing like everyone should still have the ability to play a CD, right? CDs haven't been a relevant technology forever, but the government is still pushing these ideas from the turn of the century when broadcasting was a new technology, right? And so I think, like, again, I feel like that just strengthens my argument of the government has no clue what they're doing and has no clue about what the technology even is or does. therefore they shouldn't be in charge of pushing it forward, because they won't, right? They'll be afraid of it. And that's all like every other technology that's been regulated before, any new technology has the same set of arguments, right? The Luddites with the printing press is a great example. You're going to displace jobs. It's new and dangerous. It's the typewriter might fall on somebody and kill them, and now we have a huge problem, right? It's the same kind of arguments. And I would say time and time again, every new technology leads to the development of jobs and other technologies that nobody would have ever thought possible. Like cars is a great example. It put horse drivers out of business. It put poop scoopers, right? You used to have people who literally walked around and cleaned up horse poop on the road. Oh no, their jobs are going away. Real thing. In New York City, there was a bunch of strikes and there was like physical battles to keep those jobs. Nobody saw the gas haulers or the gas station people. Nobody saw the mechanics that had to fix this stuff. Nobody saw the factories that had to start making these things at scale, and nobody saw the safety regulations that were implemented to then, bring things like ABS brakes and airbags. And now we have a whole industry of people designing better ways to not get hurt in a car. None of that was ever probably conceived of at the time. And so the same is with AI. If we're putting constraints on it before we even get there, then we're never going to get there. And there have been real laws that a lot of governments are looking at.
California.
And they're doing it wrong. They're trying to look at how big the model is, or how many parameters it has, or how many GPUs it has. And I mean, this is like the prime example of people who don't know what they're doing, latching onto some little detail to try to do something. It's the same way in business, right? The MBA, I have one, I shit on it all the time. We have to measure it, or we can't, measure it. And then you measure something dumb and you don't get actual outcome.
Right.
And so if we don't just let the companies that are doing this push it out and push it forward, then we're never going to have the technology, and we might as well just stop now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it becomes a conversation of like, who's watching the watchers kind of thing, right? If no one understands what the AI people are pushing, then who's to stop them from pushing whatever it is that they're pushing? So, outside of the debate, I think a more realistic answer to like who gets to control it, I think there's got to be some cross-disciplinary stakeholding involved in all the parties that have a say in it. And when you're talking about such a transformative technology that has the ability to affect people, and the government's role in doing right by its people, the government needs to have a stake in the system. Not to say that they're going to guide it or direct it, because we all know the government doesn't know, strictly speaking, what all these technologies do, right? There are experts within the government that do, but very rarely is it that driving the decision. So fair point. I think it's multi-complicated or multi-stakeholder, multi-cross-disciplinary kind of style, consortium-like-ish.
But one of the questions in the chat here too is, who and how will guardrails be placed on AI to keep it under control so it doesn't go crazy? So we've been kind of talking a little bit about that. But I would say like the guardrails need to be the government. They need to put the parameters and the laws in place, but they should not be limiting the technology. Just like today, our law says no murder, but that we don't limit all sorts of dangerous shit that you could murder people with. We just say, don't use this to murder people. If you murder people, then you go to jail or you face consequences. And I think people confuse that a lot. And we can't limit the progress of the technology, again, by people who have no idea what they're doing, but we can still put constraints and limitations on it, right? So I think something that I've been seeing recently that a lot of the AI companies are looking at is, how do you prevent kids from interacting with AI in ways that might be harmful to them or gating it. And like, YouTube, we're on YouTube right now. They've put in limitations on watch times, right? You can have a reminder to say, stop watching. So it's like the companies are already doing their best job. And I would say this is a great argument for keeping America at the forefront of AI development. Like, America should be setting how the technology works. We don't want other countries with different values or different morality pushing it forward. So I would again argue that even more so, we need to just let the technology run and put it out there. And then as it goes, the government and Congress and needs to put in the regulations.
Yeah. I mean,
not limitations. I think there's a very big difference, right?
Yeah.
We don't want AI to do nuclear weapons or mass bombs and all this kind of stuff that I think most people, or pretty much everybody, I think everybody agrees. And let's codify that, right? Like, just like anything else. Like, if I was out there on the street corner telling people how to harm people, I'm going to get arrested.
Right. I think you brought up the good point with America being a key player in the direction that it goes, but it's a multifaceted question because there is this idea of global politics at hand, right? So if you look at the discussions around the AI game, quote unquote game, with America and China, there's an element of national security. If a nation that has contrarian views or perspectives or directions for where they want to take AI, we need to sort of make sure that it's the arms race, effectively, right? You got to make sure you get there so that you have the power to, or the leverage to press on to other nations who are also developing technology, that you guide the direction that it goes in. And I think your point is sound, that I think in general, everybody says, let's not have nuclear weapons, let's not build towards these types of things. But we're still running into those problems now with wars trying to suppress the development of nuclear weapons. So it's a very, very difficult question. Who should be? We as like humans, but are we there yet? I don't know. Will we get there? Hopefully.
And I think that's an interesting question. So one of the questions that was submitted pre-live stream was, what is your definition of art? Can an animal make art? Can an LLM create art? And kind of back to your like humanity kind of point, I think that's an interesting question to take up. If I would say that my definition of art would be the expression of the state of human being, or
keyword. Okay.
Human comma being, not human being. It's the expression of the human condition in a way that resonates with someone. Sorry, all contemporary art, you failed.
Yeah, interesting. It's a very good question. I feel like it's one of those questions that what is art kind of thing. That's the first one, right? Because I think the rest of the question kind of depends on how you define art.
Yeah, but I mean, I think just to your point, like that's like literally people do like masters and this kind of stuff. But I would say, for like the sake of argument or discussion, art is an expression that is relayed to somebody else, right? It's the standard sender receiver communication thing. And it's how you communicate. That could be words, visuals, paint, dance, like any kind of whatever medium, agnostic, but you're trying to communicate something about the human condition to somebody else. And so like, if you agree with that, can AI do that?
At this moment, I don't think so. I think it's hard to say, because I've looked at this before with something like music. So when you have like generated music, if you didn't know where the source came from, actually this is actually in knowledge as well. This is one of the things that I personally have been involved in with medical knowledge. It's like, if you don't know where the medical knowledge is coming from, doesn't matter. Right. So if you're talking about in the art context, if you just heard or saw a piece of artwork and you didn't know whether it was created by a human or a machine, would you still call it art? And I think your answer, not you specifically, but the audience, your answer to that answers the question. That, in my opinion.
Lost.
Why is that?
I'm putting it in the chat. It's a Newsweek article. I'm not condoning Newsweek, but it was the first thing I could find. But there was actually a country music song that was AI generated that became #1 on the charts. So it was all AI generated, and it won because people liked it. So yes, AI can create art.
Yeah. I mean, so here's the thing. If you saw the top charts and you saw a #1 song on there, and you didn't know it was AI generated, you could say that's art, then yes, it's art. If you all of a sudden you knew that it was AI generated and then you all of a sudden called it not art, I think you should rethink what your definition of art is. And that's not to say that you can have a wrong definition. It's sort of like one of the subjective opinions. It's like, I agree with your sense in a sense of, we talked about it before. There's an intention, like the creator has an intention of trying to convey to the person quote unquote consuming the art. But in these scenarios where you have top charts of AI generated songs, are you going to say that songs aren't art, or just that one song is not art?
And I intentionally didn't say human created. Right.
Sure.
And on the podcast, we talk about creativity through art, science, and technology. And so with art, I try to have a more narrow definition of the human condition. And the human condition is, I guess, unique to humans because no other animal on the planet has been able to communicate in ways we understand, at least, about it. However, AI has the entire corpus of information in it, right? And so I think it's pretty arrogant to say that only humans can understand humans. Anyone who owns a dog or a cat will tell you that if you're upset or mad or whatever, the animal picks up on it. So like understanding the human condition is something that animals can do. So why can't AI? And then it becomes, can it effectively express something? Animals, as far as I know, we haven't had anyone. There's been some chimps that have done some things that may or may not have been original, may or may not have been mimicked. Who knows? But I would argue that AI definitely can, right? I think it can. And I think like another like proof of this, and again, I'll disclaim that these are the views for the sake of debate and not necessarily mine or Nathan's. But the AI therapists, right? So people are already using AI. This is not a recommendation, but using AI for therapy and getting reflections back on them, right? And so people are obviously finding that value. And so if the AI is giving you insights about yourself or your psychology, why couldn't it produce art? And like the image generation, the video generation, that's all unique. A lot of that stuff isn't like, yes, it mimics a person or whatever, but none of those people exist. It's not like even humans, I would almost argue, can't make art because we base everything on
what we know and
what's been in it. And it's always like, painting evolved because we were painting people or painting what we observed. Is that original invention? I would argue maybe not. Is AI's stuff original? Absolutely. So maybe AI is actually better at art than humans.
Yeah, it depends on what you mean by art, I guess, right? It depends on what your definition of is.
All right, we had another one submitted beforehand too, and then I see a couple in chat. We'll try to get to those. But Jeffrey Hilton, godfather of AI, has said, perhaps tongue in cheek, that if you want a job that AI won't take, become a plumber. What are your thoughts on some AI proof, in quotes, careers that will not be automated away, at least not in the foreseeable future? I hate that question, but it's good.
Why do you hate the question? Can you start with that? It's hard. You said you hate it because it's hard.
Yeah. Okay. So what are our thoughts on some AI proof careers that will not be automated away, at least in not the foreseeable future?
I think Hinton was on the right track. Plumbing and electricity. I personally am exploring the electrical space. So not out of this for this reason, but the more you learn about it and the more you work with it, I think the more you sort of have to be able to be flexible in the right ways, which I don't think AI is quite good at yet, in the sense of you have these bounds of, obviously you have physics laws, which you can kind of go by, but then you have like construction laws where you can go by. But sometimes you got to break those construction laws if you need to know what you're doing, or you can't connect the system to that one because there needs to be something in place. And you sort of have to figure that out on the fly. And maybe I can do that, but at the end of the day, you still need someone to actually physically do it. And I don't think, here's here's the way I can dodge it, is in the foreseeable future, I don't quite think embodied AI is there yet. to be able to do a lot of the physical things that humans need to do, where we combine the knowledge with the physical labor. So that's my first crack at it. I don't know.
Yeah, I would agree. I would say that it's not necessarily that the AI can't figure it out. It's just the
Yeah.
robotics and the physical manifestation is hard. I would argue, for the purposes of this debate, that that is a great thing for AI to help us with. And there's been a lot of really good reinforcement learnings in the last, I would say, 6 to 9 months, where the AI is actually pretty good at teaching itself. And so if you give it the ability, like cooking is one thing that's actually really hard. You have to have the dexterity to like crack an egg without breaking the egg into pieces. You don't want a shell in the egg, in whatever you're making. And so that sounds really easy, and it's kind of like, duh, but like AI has no concept of that, because AI has never eaten a piece of shell, right? And AI has never held an egg. And so we've kind of, a lot of that is built into our biology. And like, if anyone's ever had an undercooked egg, exactly what that is. If you've had an overcooked egg, you know exactly what that is. You have to program all that, and it has to learn it. And so when it starts to then become like what is a human preference, right? And not everybody likes eggs. Some people choose not to eat eggs, right? If you're a vegan or whatever. And so that AI doesn't know that either. Oh, all humans like eggs, except for all these people who don't. Or maybe you're allergic, right? And so it's a human preference problem. They're not good at that. So unfortunately, I think like the service industry is still going to be around quite a bit. Like a lot of that will start to probably see AI seeping in a more of an augmented fashion, but you're still going to have people running food around. Like, yes, I know there's conveyor belt stuff. And if you go to a nice restaurant, the waiter, the pro tip, if you've not been to a nice restaurant or don't know this, but wait staff's usually pretty good. And like, yeah, you want to work with them, they'll help you to get the best food. AI will do that too. Anything in the physical world, I think, is still pretty safe. I see AI really helping a lot in those instances. The problem is, again, understanding the visual world, which computer vision has made leaps and bounds. Like anyone who's seen a self-driving car, that's computer vision manifest. We've also taught it in the confines of driving that this is what you do. Whereas if you were like the plumber, was in the kind of the question, you need a lot of understanding on physics and our world, again, human preferences, about plumbing to do plumbing. And so right now that takes a human being a lot of time to apprentice and learn and make mistakes and kind of figure stuff out. No plumbing is the same. Like every building, the physics of plumbing are the same, but how the water comes out of the wall is a little different. The knobs are, so all that stuff's really hard for AI right now, but it'll figure it out. And so I think, unfortunately, and I know I'm supposed to be pro AI, it's going to free us up to do all this shit nobody wants to do. Right. Like there was a thing, I forget what her name was, but some woman was on like LinkedIn and she's like, I want the AI that's going to fold my laundry and do the dishes and cook, not the AI who's going to take my job. And so I would argue, though, that a lot of the physical labor stuff, machines have already taken over. Like it used to take hundreds of people to build a road. Now it's a few people and a bunch of machines. And so AI is going to help us be better and do things faster and more efficiently. As robotics, which is a totally different field, progresses, I think we're going to start seeing a lot more of the human tasks and things go away. Like we're already seeing this. This is already real. Like anyone who's worked in a warehouse knows that advanced warehouses exist and humans don't really do much unless the robot gets stuck. So we're already kind of there, but it's also expensive. And so as costs come down, I think it'll become more ubiquitous, which means there'll be more data, which means it'll get better.
Yeah. I want to highlight your point about the human preference piece. I think if you try and, take a step back, at the end of the day, we're all human, right? So service industry, I think if you look at, there's actually now maybe a rising demand for human servers because you don't want to interface with a robot. We want to see other people. Caregiving, human caregiving. You want a human to take care of you, not a robot, even if the robot is better. And so there are elements of humanity that we sort of lose when we defer a lot of the things relating to interpersonal or inner object relations, that we want a human on the other end and not a robot or AI.
Some people.
Some people,
right?
Sure.
The touchless checkouts, the self checkouts are big and popular. I know some people hate them. Some people.
I would argue, I'd argue that there's a weird U shape where people would enjoy that, but then as they get towards the end of their life, they actually realize that they want more human connection. So it kind of goes the other way.
Yeah, but do you want human connection in a grocery store, or do you want human connection at a moment in time of your leisure?
I think it depends on the state of the world you're in at that moment. So if you're in a world that's overrun by AI, you would probably take the supermarket connection if you can get it.
I would again argue human preference.
It's a good one. I like that. Yeah.
Had a question in the chat on AI algorithms. Do you think we're close? Where am I at? Oh yeah. Hypothetical premise: AI gains access to deliver lethal force, like the militarization of AI, I guess would be kind of the bent there. The AI decides to unalive a person. Mm-hmm. Who's responsible for that? I would say, I guess, for the pro AI, there would be a well-defined set of rules and laws that it would follow. Nathan,
the question's arguing against AI already. I don't have to do much here. We don't know. I think it's ambiguous. That's why it's so difficult to make to make the adoptions of these types of technologies, right?
I mean, I think that's like one of the ultimate things, though, is it again, it's fundamentally who's responsible for it. Is it the people who code it? Is it the company who puts it out? Is it the person who uses it? And that's something I think we really need to figure out, because I really don't think AI is at this point capable of being trusted without human in the loop for anything important or critical. And in most cases, I would probably even argue, I know I'm supposed to be for, but like, it's not ready for most things. Yeah. And so the people still need to be in charge. Just like if you, are cooking food for somebody and undercook it and they get sick, like you're technically liable for that, whether or not you can prove that, that was done or whatever, but you're still, your job is to make sure that the food is safe. And so I would say it would be the same if you were using AI to cook food and you're the chef or you're the owner of the restaurant, and then the AI screws up, then you should be liable for that because you own it. There's a question around, like, can AI own something, which is a whole legal nightmare. Right now, no. But, that is a future that we could live in, that AI has been given enough autonomy by our society to be able to do that. And that's a whole area that's probably a different podcast.
Yeah, I mean, it is an emerging field that people are starting to think about these types of things. I think is the key word. But like, what does happen in a scenario where you do get to the point where you have entities that are mostly artificial? Do they get any rights at all? Do we become a human first society and stuff like that? I think the question is one that I think we've been trying to understand for a very, very long time, not just in this generative AI boom, but again, going back to autonomous vehicles and autonomous drones, who carries the culpability when an action goes wrong? I think the autonomous vehicle analogy is the most apt, because we've seen some of it when you have an automated vehicle or a vehicle that's quote unquote driving itself and gets into an accident, who becomes at fault, who becomes liable for damages and whatnot. So this is unfolding. I don't know that we have an answer right now. I don't know when we will have an answer either, because I think it's a very difficult problem. We're grappling with things that we don't quite fully understand or have models for.
I would agree. I think it's a really interesting topic, and it is, again, something that we need to be kind of keeping top of mind as we go. We like to try to keep these to usually a half hour in the podcast. Sometimes we'll go a little over. So I'll leave a final question, and then we'll ask the folks who are on the live stream to vote who won. But yeah, I know, right? Maybe we'll just forget that and end early. A question again that came in before, and I appreciate everyone who's asked questions in the chat and everyone who submitted them before the live stream. We'll probably do another live stream again, so we'll do kind of the same format. So keep an eye out. Make sure you like and subscribe, all that nonsense, so that you know when we're going to do this again. But what's a piece of technology most people overlook that you think is quietly changing the game?
Oh, are we answering this now?
Yeah.
We could do a podcast on this.
We could.
I thought about this. Okay, my short answer is I don't know if you would call it a technology, but I'm going to ride the AI train for a little bit because I do think it is quite a paradigm shift in the way we think about things. But world models, so having AIs that understand rules that replicate the real world, because I think once we can understand and are able to build good enough world models, it unlocks a whole new world in the digital realms that we can use to make better decisions in the real world. So this goes down the path of digital twins, being able to run simulations, not having LLMs that hallucinate too much, or maybe more grounding, I would say. But that is one thing I think is underrated in the sense that people aren't looking at enough. I know there are people who in the AI space who have claimed that world models are kind of like the next big thing, but I also believe that world models could be a very big game changer in terms of where the world is headed once we can actually build them properly. I don't know if that counts as technology, but that was the first thing I thought of because I've been thinking about that a lot.
Yeah, I put up a poll in the chat for folks who are here live. Who won? Yes is Andrew. No is Nathan. For and against, I guess.
For and against, yeah, sure.
But yeah, the world models are interesting, and for folks, that's like a way to basically have a simulation to simulate. And so one of the problems of trying to train AI models is that you have to do the stuff. Like when you, as a human, learn how to do stuff, you have to fall down the steps to figure out the steps, right? You have to fall off the bike to figure out. It's just part of, like, we just take that for granted. And it's really hard to get AI on a bike to get at that experience. And so a lot of these world models allow those kinds of experiences to mimic the physics and whatever else you're trying to tune for, so that the AI can do, hundreds or thousands or millions of permutations to try to figure it out. It's the same idea as how like AlphaGo works, or
100%, right.
Or the chess Deep Blue, from IBM back in the day. So it's if they can just, the AI can make, the AI can play every single permutation of chess within a few seconds. And human beings, it would take years or maybe a lifetime to even try to do that.
Right.
I like that. My technology, I haven't really thought about this. I would say though, my tech pick would be like silicon-based logic programming. And so like things like NPUs, TPUs, tensors. And so the hardware that powers this stuff, it's a lot of computation, right? So it's a lot of matrix math, it's a lot of vectorization. It's things that people can do. It's very hard. A lot of the math that takes place in AI is impossible for people to do. Like, you could do it, but it would take hundreds of humans, hundreds of years to complete one simple calculation. So that's why, like, we know how AI works, but we really don't know why, and we don't really know why it can do what it does or what it has done. And I think the sleeper tech that is out there, so everybody's probably heard of Nvidia at this point. They've been a graphics processing GPU company forever, for 30 something years. They've mostly been doing like video game stuff or complex simulation graphics. They've gotten the edge on AI chips because GPUs are able to do these massive calculations in parallel very efficiently. They've also embedded some technologies in those that make it faster. And the technologies that make the computations faster are also able to be put in other things. And so
what we're seeing, and I don't try not to call out companies, but like Google is, I think, a sleeper in the AI space because Google's had its own complex math chips, we'll call them, that they've developed for probably 10 years. And so they don't need to buy Nvidia chips. Everyone else is trying to buy all these Nvidia chips to try to, get the power to run the AI, but Google uses its own infrastructure. And I don't remember what the exact data was on the current generation, but it's like 30% of the power to run a similar computation than like an Nvidia would be. And so kind of back earlier, resources and whatnot, like Google's a great example. It costs a lot of money to run a data center, and Google figured out a long time ago that if they can make their own stuff, they can control for that. And if you take off a couple watts off of every computer in a data center, and there's tens of thousands of computers in a data center, you're saving millions or tens of millions of dollars because you don't have to heat it, you don't have to cool it, you don't have to run the power even. And so there's a lot of companies who are working on these chips, or they're putting systems together that will just kind of fit in a data center. So you don't have all these individual like GPU cards and servers. You just dump what they call a rack in a data center, and it's just kind of ready to go, like rack level hyperscalers, those kind of things. I don't hear much about this at all in the tech news period. And I'm sure most people have no idea what I'm talking about. That, I think, is going to be the revolution in computing, and that AMD has kind of already done this. They have an AI chip. I forget what all the numbers are behind it, but they've taken an NPU, which is a logic
neural processing
coprocessor, to do all those calculations. And so it can do 50 teraflops, I believe. Don't quote me, but it's a lot. Whereas like your average GPU to do that would need probably 300 or 400 watts. It can do that in like 5. And so as we make more of these, as we get better at that, the power, the resource limitations will all go down. You'll be able to put them in your phone. So your AI will be better on your phone and won't have to call out to the cloud or call out to a data center. It'll be faster. It'll be better. And then again, you'll be able to run so many more of these things in the current power envelope that will be able to do things that we can't even imagine today. So I think that's the sleeper technology. And they're good for other things too, not just AI. So that's another thing. It just makes everything better and faster. When you take a picture on your phone, there's a pretty good probability that your phone is using an NPU or some sort of like a tensor, Google will call it, to do a lot of these calculations that would not have been possible 5 years ago, or it would have taken hours in Photoshop to try to tweak everything. And now before you even click the button, it's already done.
Your explanation reminded me, maybe an honorable mention, not necessarily a sleeper technology, but I do think in terms of game changing, quantum's been in this the realm for a long time. But I give it an honorable mention only because it really does change the way that standard computing works, just by the nature of the way that quantum mechanics works. It's not the way that we do things now. So I wouldn't necessarily call it a sleeper technology, but once we crack it or once we figure something out, then it definitely will be a game changer in terms of how we do things in the computer. Maybe not. It's not
things
for some things. But those some things like encryption are fundamental to all the things that we do now. So
that's a different cast, but I like theoretically, yes. Like, so most encryption is just large numbers. It's a prime factorization effectively. And so it takes longer to factor those numbers than is useful to try to break it. It doesn't mean it's unbreakable. It just means it's hard. And quantum computing can theoretically make that irrelevant because it can effectively know all of the factorization. It doesn't really work that way though. Like quantum is we should probably talk about this on the actual podcast, because like quantum is a whole breadth of different technologies. Like a qubit isn't a qubit, right? And a qubit is a measurement of how fast a computer or a quantum computer is, or the level of computation. So it's kind of like a teraflop or a megahertz or something like that, but it's not.
Well, a qubit is a qubit, but it's also used as the measure of its performance, right? Because
but it's relative based on who makes the qubit and what the qubit does. So it's a non-standard measurement.
Okay. I see what you mean. I see what you mean.
Yeah,
okay, sure.
So, but it is really going to be good for like drugs and any sort of math thing, right? Because you can effectively do all of those maths in one state instead of having to compute out this really long thing.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to end the poll with a 3-to-1 margin. Nathan won.
Yes.
I'm never doing one of these again.
AI is bad. No, I think the current state of the world, there's a negative spin on AI right now. I think I chose the easy one.
Yeah. So thanks everybody for joining and participating. And again, we'll put this out on the podcast feed this week. It'll go to YouTube any moment as soon as the stream's done if you want to rewatch it or send it to folks. Thanks for submitting questions ahead of time. And I guess until next time.
Yeah, hopefully we get to do one of these more interactively.
Yeah.
We'll talk a little bit about that too. That'd be fun to get some of the audience to join in the conversation. That'd be cool.
Yeah, awesome. Happy Wednesday. It's not Friday anymore.
Yeah. All right. It was fun.
Take care.
Thanks for the conversation.